issues, but I very much agree with the member for Aberdeen North that this was a very good-humoured debate, albeit one with rather too many puns, I think, if I may say so. But it was a very, very important debate. As so many members have said, from right across the country, the British and indeed UK pub is renowned around the world since the oldest one was established right back in the 11th century. It's a central feature of our national life, and we've already gone through many of the statistics. I won't do that now, but I very much agree with the member for Ribble Valley that actually much of the economic impact from the pub sector and indeed the brewery sector is indirect as well as direct. We've talked, of course, a lot about the impact on employment, and it was very interesting in particular to hear about the experience from my friend for Haywood and Middleton about her working life. It was also the first taste that I had of working life as well, working in a pub and restaurant, paid the princely sum of £2 an hour before Labour's minimum wage was introduced, I would mention to members and friends. Now, of course, this sector is a very, very important one, supporting around 1 million jobs in the UK. Those who work in that sector, of course, contribute many payroll taxes as well. But also these pubs are really community hubs, as so many members and friends have said. My friend for Ealing West and Acton referred to the role they can play in combating loneliness. And in fact, during this debate, we've heard about how pubs can help older gentlemen. I don't know why I'm gesturing in this direction, but how they are open, of course, to mothers in the run-up to Mother's Day. But also, of course, they're open. I'm very happy to.
On that point of loneliness, we've recently had a consultation in the west of Wales on reconfiguration of health services, and Dr Rhys Thomas, one of the lead consultants, informed us that one of the biggest health challenges we face in terms of public health is loneliness. So there's a public health issue to this as well.
Thank you very much, Madam Deputy Speaker. And I absolutely agree with the point that was made. And in fact, this is now evidenced. Work has been undertaken, commissioned by CAMRA, which is actually set out quite clearly that there is a positive impact from people using pubs, obviously in the kinds of ways that we've been talking about during this debate. I would also point out the fact that also has been made in this debate that, of course, many people who use pubs aren't necessarily drinking alcohol when they're doing so. They're using them in a whole variety of different ways. And I would mention also the fact that many pubs now, particularly community pubs, a point I'll come back to later, are setting up special sessions for people with different conditions like dementia, for example. So they're very, very important institutions from that point of view. But we have, of course, seen some worrying developments as well, which many members have referred to. We've seen pubs closing at an alarming rate. Last summer, we saw figures showing that 18 pubs a week are closing. Now, those closures, of course, are occurring at the same time as closures in libraries, post offices, banks, many local shops as well. That's happening in rural areas, as was mentioned, but also in urban areas too. And I think my friend for Chesterfield noted very movingly what happens when the last pub moves off an estate, and that was an issue that my friend for Barnsley East also referred to very, very importantly. Now, members from across the House have rightly raised the importance of local pubs, but they've also talked about many of the challenges facing them as well. So I'll talk about those in the time that I have left. First of all, of course, around the tax system, and I'll talk about beer tax, the small brewers relief and business rates as well. We are, I think, in a peculiar situation when it comes to beer tax, and I have to say that I concur with the IFS's assessment that the UK's current system of alcohol excise duties is a mess, and the way we tax our alcohol doesn't necessarily fully correct for the social costs of alcohol either. We really do need to see that longer-term approach, and I hope the Minister is going to spell out the Government's long-range approach to this issue. It's very important, given the developments at EU level that we talked about before. It's also important, I think, given the development of the low-alcohol beer sector too, which was mentioned by the member for Faversham and East Kent and many other members as well. This is very significant now, but we don't yet have a response from the taxation system. And I would mention also in the context the fact that so many different members have pointed to, which is the very corrosive impact of low-quality, high-alcohol products being drunk at home and being cheaper to drink at home a lot of the time. The negative impact that that is having. The member for Caithness, Sutherland and Easter Ross mentioned that, also my friend for North Tyneside, and the member for Strangford as well they might, because it's a very, very important issue. Secondly, when it comes to the small brewers relief, I think we had a very interesting discussion around that. My friend for Stoke-on-Trent North talked about the importance of that for small breweries, but I think also we do need to look carefully at the calibration of that relief, given some of the potentially unintended consequences that were mentioned, and I think there were some interesting ideas around that put forward by my friend for Keighley, and I hope they will be taken into account by the review that is currently being undertaken into that relief. I would say, though, despite these kinds of pressures, we're seeing incredible innovation here, particularly in the craft brewery sector, and I would just want to also plug the micro pubs movement, which is one that's taken place in my constituency as well, in our amazing covered market too. Finally, when it comes to the tax situation, of course, many members have talked about business rates. To be not too blunt about it, the business rate situation has been incredibly damaging for both pubs, but of course for many other businesses which are based on bricks rather than on clicks, to put it very boldly. I think that my friend from Stoke-on-Trent North put this very, very clearly. She talked about the imbalance there. Many other members also referred to this, that of course with corporation tax you only pay that tax once you are once a business is profitable, and yet the focus from government appears to have been on reducing that corporation tax rate. It's not the approach that would be taken by my party, because we do value high streets and we value those bricks and mortar based businesses. And of course this isn't just something that applies to pubs. My friend for Cardiff West rightly mentioned the impact this is having on music venues as well, and of course they're often the same place as the local pub in practice. We do need to look at these issues in the round, and in fact we should be looking at them in relation to council tax too. That's why we've committed to having a proper review of local taxation. We think that's well overdue now. But of course, just to finish off, Madam Deputy Speaker, there are many other non-tax related impediments facing pubs as well. I think that was a point made very forcefully by my friend for West Bromwich West. In particular, the pubs code that was meant to balance the playing field for small pub tenants hasn't operated in the way that many of us had hoped. There is manipulation of the situation, it appears, and this is immensely problematic because we still have those tenants in subservient relationships to pub companies, as was mentioned by my friend for Leeds North West. This is a big problem for social mobility as well, because it means that people who start off pulling pints can't end up being in that ownership situation. We can't have that social mobility that was mentioned by my friend for Coatbridge, Christon and Bellshill. I would like to hear from the Minister when the compulsory review into the pubs code is going to be due. I thought it was going to be coming this month. It would be great to hear exactly when it's going to arrive. And can we please be assured that that process will be open and accountable? We really need to restore trust and accountability to the process. We also, as was mentioned by my friend for Stroud, we also need to make sure that communities are aware of that social value process as well, so that they can take over those community assets when they want to, and many, many communities aren't aware of them. Now, just finally, in the last few seconds that I have, sadly, many of us have said this is a refuge from Brexit. Sadly, it isn't entirely, of course. First of all, because the workforce is incredibly important to the pub sector. We're all aware, I'm sure, of many of the concerns about what will happen if, in particular, we have a threshold of £30,000 to get workers into the UK. UK Hospitality have said that current proposals are illogical. We need to deal with this challenge. And lastly, the member for Waveney quite rightly referred to the importance of exports from our brewery industry in particular. It's really important that we don't impose any additional bureaucracy on those exporters, particularly in some of those real growth fields and from really innovative parts of our brewing industry. So I hope that the Minister will respond to those issues in his remarks, particularly about the beer tax, small brewers relief, business rates, but also around some of those legal issues as well. Thank you very much.
Mr. Robert Jenrick.